Welcome, Browns fans, and happy Friday. This is the OBR Roundtable, where this Friday night and every Friday night of this season, we'll be breaking down the matchup to come for the Browns. I'm Corey Gaudreau, and tonight we have a ton of that we want to get through. We've got Jake and Anthony both going through the offense for the Browns. We're also going to be breaking down the defense and how the Browns plan to stop or possibly contain Travis Kelce this weekend. But first, let's kick things over, and I'll introduce my other host here. We got Stephen Thomas, our draft analyst, Brown analyst, and general totem enthusiast.
Yeah. Corey has never seen it before, guys. This is Boinka. It's Boinka the totem. It's very bad. Steal Boinka's rum is very bad. So we'd like to welcome you aboard. We told you guys we had a new host coming in. Corey is here. He comes down to us from the great Northeast Corridor. We should be right up front. We're not going to hide this. He is more a Patriots fan than a Browns fan. So we're going to teach him along the way what it feels like to be elsewhere in the last 20 years of the Tom Brady Mountain. But we're excited to have you here. And we got like he said, we got a packed show for you tonight. Just about everybody from the OBR crew is going to pop in. We're going to look at the Chiefs game and some individual matchups from every possible angle. And Corey's going to be the one to make sure things move smoothly. So welcome aboard, man. It's good to be here with you.
Great. So glad to be here, Stephen. Thank you very much. Like you mentioned, I would told you just before that the very first game I ever went to was the Browns versus the Patriots in the Tim Couch or Tim Sofa era, as we called them here in New England. But again, we've got plenty to go through in our 1 hour here that we've got. So let's kick things right off, right into the rumor mill. And if you've got to or want to check out more, any quick rumors or what have you, we can check things out here on the OBR. But let's start things off talking with the injury report. We've got Brad Stainbrook here. Brad, so far, taking a look at the injury report, just came out a little while ago. Things look relatively clean, but how is the injuries looking for the Browns going into this first week?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? So we'll start right off the bat with Odell Beckham Jr., Jadeveon Clowney, Grant Delpit, Ronnie Harrison Jr., J.C. Treader, and Chase McLaughlin. All those players are listed as questionable, but I'm expecting the majority of those players to play. That includes Odell Beckham Jr. All signs point as Odell Beckham Jr. as a go right now. He might be on a snap count come Sunday, but that's expected. His rehab process has been crazy fast for an injury like that. But Chase McLaughlin, he was added to the injury report today after practicing all 3 days. They're calling it a right hamstring injury, and with a kicking position, that's not an injury you want to be dealing with. And the Browns have had struggles with kicker this camp. They let go of Cody Parkey, who was dealing with an injury. So the Browns struggling at the kicking position right now.
Yeah, now I did notice that even though he was listed as questionable, I saw somebody say that he was a full participant in practice today. And we should remind everyone that a few years ago, they changed it. There's no more doubtful, likely, all that kind of stuff. If you are not 100%, you're listed as questionable. So if you even, if you have a hangnail, you're listed as questionable. So even though all these guys are listed as questionable, as far as I understand it, Brad, like you just said, all of them are expected to play. There's nobody that's like truly 50-50 or anything like that, right?
That's correct. That's my understanding right now. Well, Chase McLaughlin kind of came out of nowhere, so I'm not sure if Chase, informed the trainers after practice today of his injury. And if that was the case, they do, by NFL rules, have to, report that injury. So that's just kind of up in the air, in my opinion. But other than that, I think everybody else is good.
As far as the Chiefs injury report, there's a couple things that are on there. Mecole Hardman has been limited a few times. He's got an oblique injury that could be big. We still don't know about Frank Clark. He's been the same for almost a month now. They've been saying, yeah, he's okay, but he's 50-50, all that kind of stuff. So we don't know about that. The big one, though, that everybody is curious about, Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, is still in the COVID protocol. Andy Reid today said his most ominous sentence yet. He said, we'll just have to see how that goes. To me, that sounds like kind of a never say never type of thing, but it feels like even if he does play, he's not going to be near himself. Have you heard anything about Honey Badger from your sources, Brad?
I have not, but he does have to test negative twice in a row, symptom-free. And there was reports, I believe, that did say he was vaccinated. So he still has to be symptom-free for 24 hours, two test apart, which is a key. And so they need to get on that now if he's going to play. But I know even if he does play, like you said, Steven, look at Myles Garrett, look at Denzel Ward as examples. He's not going to be 100%, and you have to think the Browns will be looking at that position as a possible target to take advantage of.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, like everybody else, you just want the guy to get healthy.
Correct.
The human being is more important. But if you take it from a purely football standpoint, if he does go out there and he's, his wind isn't what it is. I mean, we saw Denzel and Myles last year. They just weren't themselves when they came back from it. And if he's not running like he runs, he covers a lot of grass for this Chiefs defense. Yeah, I mean, if you might feel a little bit bad about it, but inside the white lines, you're going to attack that and make him do whatever he can do. Until he proves that he can stop you, especially with all the deep speed that we've added. What else have you heard going? You said something about you think Odell is going to play, but he might be on a snap count.
I think that might.
And observations on Odell.
Yeah, I think that might be the case for the first couple weeks as the Browns want to be bringing them on slowly, and the Browns don't have the toughest schedule. I'm not saying it's just a weird feeling that the Browns are good, so. They're expected to win the first couple games this year, besides the Chiefs game, of course. It's a 50-50 game, in my opinion. Our season predictions are out today on OBR.com, and tomorrow we have our game predictions coming out. But yeah, I just think the Browns want to be safe about Odell Beckham Jr. He hasn't talked to the media at all this year. He's declined. The last time we've talked to Odell Beckham Jr. was at his pro camp 2 days before training camp opened, and he made it clear that, he's done talking and, he just wants to perform. And, I know he's excited to perform, and I know, the team is excited to see what they have in him and see if him and Baker Mayfield can finally get that connection going.
Just a couple other things as far as the injury report goes. I saw Michael Dunn and Tony Fields were both listed as out for Sunday, but I did also see that Michael Dunn was back at practice in a limited capacity. So that tells me that he's getting better, but they're not going to risk him this Sunday, right?
Yep, that is correct. And also on Tony Fields, just to confirm, it is not COVID. It's just an illness. And even if he was fully healthy, he might have been one of those players on the inactive list just because he came back to camp pretty late. They just want to bring him on slowly again and be safe.
One last thing, JW and Clowney, they said illness. Everybody figured it was just a cold or, food poisoning from the cafeteria, just a 48 hour thing. He came back today. Any more clarity on that? Or was it pretty typical Kevin where he said, yeah, he's back and that's it?
Yeah, it's just Kevin Stefanski not saying much, saying a lot, but not really. He's fine according to Kevin Stefanski.
All right. Well, that's great. I mean, those guys are going to be the keys to the game, I think, that defensive front wall. So anything else you got for us, Brad?
Yeah, let's touch on the linebacker position. Okay. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, it's his first NFL career game that counts, of course, preseason. And I'm told that he's expected to play a lot Sunday. He's going to be the starting linebacker in the nickel packages formations the Browns are running. And they played, I saw a stat out there after I put out the report. I wish I could credit the guy off my head, but I can't. The Browns played, I think, 70% in the playoff game, 70% in nickel. So he's going to be playing significant amount of time against Kansas City. And then, of course, linebackers like Mayak Wilson will be playing more base. But JOK, first game, he's going to be out there, and the Browns are expecting a lot from him.
Yeah. Hey, Rook, go cover Travis Kelce, huh?
Right.
You might as well throw him in the deep end right off the bat. So I expect he'll get some help, and I'll touch on that a little bit later in my segment. Anything on Grant Delpit or Greedy Williams or anybody else that we've all been discussing for the last couple of weeks?
Well, listening to Joe Woods this week, it did sound like they want to be careful with Grant Delpit. He will be dressed and he will play. But don't be surprised. I mean, I think Ronnie Harrison is fine. So I think, he'll be playing a lot for him. But I think Grant Delpit, they want to bring him on slowly. Guys, he is a rookie. Technically, I know he's not listed as a rookie, but, he didn't play at all last year. So they want to bring him on slowly, just like everybody else.
All right. If you guys have any questions for Brad, now's the time, because he can only stay for just another minute or two. And we've got Jake ready to pop in with his segment here pretty soon. So we appreciate your time, Brad. Corey, you got anything for Brad?
No, that's it. Thanks so much, Brad. Really appreciate it. If you want to hear more from Brad, you can follow him both on Twitter and Instagram at Browns by Brad. And if you want to, you can also a great contributor to the Rumor Mill as well for any tips throughout the season that you can check out right at the OBR. So thanks so much, Brad. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys. Go Browns.
See you along around the season. So as we mentioned, Chiefs coming up this coming weekend. The last meaningful game that the Chiefs even played were the Chiefs and the Browns in the playoffs last season. The Chiefs are returning a vast majority of that offense from last season. Did struggle a little bit during that time, however, in that Chiefs game. So to talk a little bit about how that was last season and how the Browns might be able to make some adjustments, we have our resident OBR film expert, Jake Burns.
What's going on, guys? How are we?
We're doing great.
Tell us what you know, Jake.
Yeah, I should tell you what I know. Excuse me. Geez, just ate dinner, so it's all kind of sitting right there. So listen, I'm going to talk from an offensive perspective. For what happened last year, what happened this year, what they have to improve. They did not run the ball very well in the first half. I have some numbers for you. I'm stepping in for Cody a little bit on this, so I stole a little bit of his turf. Hopefully that doesn't bother him too much. He'll get over it. They did not run the ball well in the first half. They ran from under center, which is what we know the Browns to do. A lot of tight ends, a lot of deception baked in when you run under center. They were only able to run under center successfully for 11 carries, 28 yards, which is a problem, right? You got to be able to do that more effectively throughout the game. They did not do it well. The first half total, they only ran the ball 5 times for 12 yards. So that gives you a big inclination of what the issue was in the first half, mustering any points. As we know, the Browns struggled until they came out of halftime, right? Coming out of halftime, they decided to run a little bit more gap concepts. You guys hear me talk about gap versus zone when I've done chalk talks before. 12 rushes in the second half for 88 yards, all of which came in zone concepts from the shotgun, which is obviously important to note. Chubb 6 for 51, and then the rest were made up by Kareem Hunt. I think Baker ended up running for about 14 yards himself. But the difference in this game is that they were able to find a running game in the second half. Baker Mayfield, for example, first down throwing. This is something that has to improve drastically. 5 of 12 for 30 yards in this game. Big point of conversation this offseason, guys, has been about early down throwing for the Browns. So if we're going to see the Browns throw on early downs, they certainly cannot go into this game and perform a 5 for 12 for 30 yards. Puts a lot of pressure on third down. Now, third down in this game, Baker was able to throw 9 of 10 on third downs, pick up several third downs, but you don't want to put yourself in that position, right? You want to put yourself in better situations to alleviate the stress in later downs. So I think that that's really important to understand, is getting out in front of the sticks early, not forcing run concepts that are not there, right, and giving your quarterback a chance. So also to note, in this game, 13 pressures were created by the Chiefs on 38 dropbacks. That's a relatively high number, something that they would hope can go down in this game, that they can keep him down around the 6, 7, 8 range in terms of pressures for the game. Baker under pressure, though, was pretty good. Whenever the Chiefs blitzed, he was 17 of I should say, when they actually did blitz him, he was able to throw 9 of 14, 113 yards and a touchdown. Now, that's just blitzing, right, Steve? Guys, you know that. That's not pressure. You just blitz. Right. It's not pressure. When he was pressured, though, in those 13 times, he was 6 of 12 for 53 yards. So not great. So I would like to see them do a little better job. Now, a reminder, Jed Wills hopefully doesn't get hurt the first play and you're forced to play a left tackle like Kendall Lamb, and then I think Blake Hance played in the game a little bit too. You're hopefully not forced to deal with that scenario that often, but that's something to note. Again, Baker's second half of the year, pretty good against the blitz, and he was in this game too, 9 of 14 for 113 yards. Something else of note that's been talked about this offseason, throwing the football downfield, the addition hopefully of Odell Beckham playing in this game. We think he will. He's a downfield threat. You add Donovan Peoples-Jones taking the next step in his career. Maybe you see Anthony Schwartz get a couple of reps. In the game last year in the playoffs, Baker on throws that traveled 20 yards or more downfield, 3 of 3, 64 yards. So can they implement maybe 6 of those throws, right? Stretch the defense vertically, 6 throws with 20 yards downfield. Maybe you push that toward the 120-yard range. That can be the difference in going for maybe 20 points and 30 points, right? So that's something that we would like to see. So for this game, they were 6 of 10 for 44 yards in play action concepts. As you all know, Browns fans, the Browns and Baker are deadly in play action for the most part this past season. We need to see that have an uptick. Need to see an uptick in first down success, right? 5 of 12 for 30 yards is not going to win the game throwing like that. So They have to do a better job of throwing on early down successfully, keeping the pressure off Baker to throw in 3rd and longs. That will help. The run game, whatever way you want to go about it, find it sooner. It's great to come out of halftime and adjust, but spending an entire half against the Chiefs running for only 12 yards, right, in zone concepts. The first half, they ran only 5 times for 12 yards. That's a massive problem, guys, as you all know. So they need to be better earlier. If you want to beat the Chiefs, you have to outscore them. You can't hope that they get held to 17 points. That's not a realistic outcome. You have to go out with this game with the intention of scoring 5 touchdowns, put 35 points on the board, plus a little bit, maybe a field goal or 2 or something along those lines, but 35 points has to be the goal. How do we find the end zone 5 times? So take that into account. Looking at last year's data, once they got the run game going in the second half, they were really competent offense. They put it together in the second half, made a comeback that we all saw. But you can't take 2 quarters off to figure this thing out. You know the Chiefs, what they like to do. They show the same things in the preseason that they did last year in that playoff game. They're going to get down in your face. Even if Tyrann Mathieu doesn't play, they're going to get down in your face. They're going to try to pressure you at the line of scrimmage. Beat the pressure at the line of scrimmage, give your quarterback a little time to throw, and you know, you're gonna have a higher chance to succeed in this game. When we go back and watch last year versus this year, the types of throws Pat Mahomes had to make against the types of throws Baker had to make were night and day difference. Now, I understand Pat Mahomes, he gets those throws because of the utter fear he puts, him and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, the fear that they put into defenses. That point doesn't miss me. The Browns need to make teams pay who don't play with that same appropriate fear. So the challenge for them is going to be one on winning at the line of scrimmage for your wide receivers, establishing successful run concepts that can put you in advantageous down and distance situations, and then making life a little bit easier on Baker Mayfield so that he doesn't have to throw, 7 or 8 keyhole type of small window throws in order to have a successful passing attack in this game. So that's kind of what I got, guys. That's what I'm focusing on for the offense. I think it's going to be so paramount to find your run game early, but don't rely on that. You're gonna have to throw the ball downfield and score points to beat these Chiefs. You can't just milk the clock. Like, that's not a strategy that's going to work. If you recall, the Browns took the football to start the game last year, won the toss, took the football, trying to create possessions. You have to create possessions against the Chiefs, because if they go down and score twice and you're playing catch up against these guys, it's an absolute disaster scenario. So try to get out in front early and go from there. And I think that the data from last year's game shows some places in which the Browns can be better. And I know the game was low scoring relatively, and you can't bank on that because Chad Henne's not going to play a quarter and a half. But the Browns offense can narrow the margins here if they're able to be successful right off the bat instead of taking until halftime to figure this thing out. So again, as I've predicted all week, give me a high-scoring game. I think that it's going to be a brutal challenge for a defense just finally getting together to stop KC. So the offense should be at a 5 touchdown threshold. And if they're able to get to 35, they have a real chance to win the game. So that's what I got. I'll take some questions if you guys have them as well.
I've got one
Yep.
before we throw it out to the chat, because you touched on something in your data from last year's game that you and I have been talking about just daily, the 3 for 3 for 60 plus yards on throws that travel 20 yards down the field. Now, obviously, we've all talked ad nauseum that they have far more guys who can get 20 yards down the field on a regular basis this year than they had last year. So especially if Tyrann Mathieu is not playing, because you look at the rest of that Chiefs safety room, and Juan Thornhill is really good. Daniel Sorensen is who he is. Armani Watts is certainly no slouch, but there's only one Honey Badger. That guy covers a serious amount of grass for that team. And you hate to say this because he's got what it could be a potentially deadly disease, but is that someplace you think they'll attack early? I know you and I have had discussions that we think they're going to take a deep shot or two early, if for no other reason than to put it in the defense's mind that they have to honor it. Might pay dividends later in the game. But since he had that kind of success, do you think they're going to make a deliberate attempt to get 20 plus yards down the field in the first series, maybe the first 2 series of the game?
Of course. Yeah, they should, right? Like, I think that they're going to be more, I guess, aggressive and trying different run schemes early on, but just because they're not able to run wide zone doesn't mean they can't play action off of it, right? So there's definitely going to be opportunities to push the ball downfield with what I call run action, pulling your guard out, right? Selling run, that is a guard-based pull that really sells things to the defense, makes them suck up the field a little bit, run what I call Yankee concept, which is a post and a deep crosser, Steve, trying to hit Odell at that 25-yard mark, deep cross, is he's working his way left to right, something like that. Yeah, they should definitely attack. The thing that Badger does so well is he's an effective run support player. So I think people think pass game impact, right? Pass game impact. But this guy is a run support defender that travels hash to sideline like few others. So that could have an impact on the run game. Maybe we don't expect. He's such a disruptor in that run game. But yeah, he's an eye studying type of safety. He is a guy that they will give Rob coverage to. They'll give him some single high looks to and let him just sort of feel out the scheme, feel out Baker. He's deadly. He's just really good, and not having him around does open the quarterback feeling like they can push the ball downfield without the fear of where's 32. I need to find him, which is a big thing, right? Sometimes play callers will call downfield throws, Steve, but they don't throw them because something throws them off. So I do think we'll see. I would say 5 or 6 in this game, Steve. And I do if 32 doesn't play, there will be an aggressive nature and some early throws downfield. And even if he does play, they'll probably still take some shots. Why not, man? It's week 1. Go out and do it.
They have to. Yeah, they've got to loosen it up. Even if it doesn't hit, even if they're incomplete, it makes them, if it's just a third of a second that they have to hesitate back there, that opens up what Nick Chubb needs. Here's a good question. How many snaps do you see for Anthony Schwartz in this first week?
If he gets to 15, that's about on the high end. I would think something like being a part of special teams, a big part of it, and then something like 10, 15, maybe 20 tops. Even 20 tops feels a bit gratuitous. So, the 15 area, 10, 15, like that is where I kind of sit right now. But again, their game plan could be, hey, we want to run this guy like crazy. So I don't know. It's week 1, man. I don't know. We'll see what they want to do. I just think the way they've traditionally played with tight ends and fullbacks, the way they love to, they played with 2 or more tight ends at the highest percentage of the league last year. So until we see data that tells us otherwise, I would presume you would see him in some very specifically designed formation groupings and go from there. Like 10 to 15 feels about right for me.
And speaking of the tight ends, one more question before we let you go from Relamar, our winner the other night of the tickets to the Texans game. You still need to tweet at me, Relamar, because I need to transfer those to you. Sort of leads into what you just said. Do you think David Njoku, or I guess any of them, but he specifically mentioned Njoku, will have a bigger role because of his ability to put pressure on the defense in the middle of the field? And I'll tag on to that, something you noted a couple of nights ago with Willie Gay being on IR. You got a second-round rookie who's going to be taking a lot of snaps in Nick Bolton. Do you think they're going to attack that part of the field as well?
They'd be smart to. They did it last year. If you recall, Baker on a 3rd and 17 threw an absolute dart on a little stick and nod concept to Njoku up the right seam. Yeah, I think they should. At some point, they're going to give David a lot of opportunities. I don't know when it's going to happen. If it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen for somebody else. He is, unless he's just the worst practice player we've ever seen, guys. Like, I'm telling you, man, like this guy is cussing out coaches. He deserves opportunities. He is a unicorn type player when he goes up to get the football, and they need guys who they can throw into tight windows that can go get the ball. So I don't see why they shouldn't, other than they're just not taking advantage of a player. So it's Kevin Stefanski's not infallible. He's great. He's fantastic. Best coach I've seen for the Browns in a long time, but he's not infallible, right? And I know Anthony's going to talk about some run pass data here in a minute. He's not infallible, though. So I do need to see an uptick in David's targets. I love Austin Hooper. I think he provides a nice value in certain portions of the field. But let this guy, number 85, who's a fantastic athlete, go get some opportunities in the hashes and even isolated as an X one-on-one backside. Put a fade ball to him and let him go get it, man. Like, that's what he does. If you guys recall the Baltimore game, the opener last year against Tavon Young, he went up and got a ball from a slot fade that was a 30-yard throw. Like, they have to do that stuff. They've got athletes, and sometimes you can't just rely on a guy being open, right? You have to make challenging throws and trust your guys to go get them. So if you like throwing it to 85 on the goal line because he'll jump up and go get the ball, I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter if he's standing in the end zone jumping to get the rock, or if he's at his 40-yard line, he's going to go get it. So give him the opportunity to do it. that's a place, we talk about early down throwing. We talk about some other little areas we need Stefanski to sharpen up, maybe an uptick in 11 personnel. Put David on the field in more situations where you can take advantage of the physical traits he has. So, yeah, that's a piece of it for sure. I hope it happens. He had a nice role last year. If you recall the first play from scrimmage, he caught a tight end screen, stumbled down the field about 17-yard gain. So, yeah, man, let that guy get out in space and let him go get the football for you against smaller DBs.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jake. Really appreciate you joining us and lending your insight to us. As always, great analyst. Talking about the offensive side of the ball. And like you mentioned, we're going to stay right here on the offensive side of the ball. And Steven, as you know, I'm not the only new face here on the OBR staff. We're going to go ahead and introduce Anthony Reinhardt here, one of our newest analysts. And Anthony, why don't you just go ahead and say hi to the people and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Corey mentioned, I am a little bit new to the OBR. I've been writing here for about a month now. Got 2 articles up, one about pass probability over expected. So just kind of a way to adjust for, the down and distance and situation and get more of a true pass rate, since we all know that every down and every situation is not created equal. And then kind of the second one was about a way to find receiver efficiency metrics for kind of looking at the Browns wide receiver 3 lineup there. So, so I'm kind of more of an analytics guy. I've kind of, most of what I've done is post graphs on my Twitter account, which you're welcome to follow me on. I kind of think about the game in terms of data. I like to look at that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Was one of the big analytical, touch points is how much teams pass on first and second down. So I'm going to focus particularly on first down, because those are situations that are pretty homogeneous in nature, where where the sticks are, 1st and 10. And a lot of teams are, will go one way or the other in terms of a passing or rushing balance. Across the league in 2020, teams passed the ball 53% of the time on 1st and 10 last year. When teams ran the ball on 1st and 10, they gained an average of 4.7 yards per rush. And when I say rush there, I mean plays where they decided before the play that it was going to be a running play. Not scrambles count as passing plays for this measure. So 4.7 yards per rush on the rushing side. On the passing side, teams average 7.3 yards per drop back. So that includes completions, incompletions, sacks, and scrambles. So a difference of 2.6 yards there. So you're looking at 60% more yards on 1st and 10 when you pass the ball as opposed to running it. The Browns had a pretty similar split. Out of the 400 or so plays where they had a 1st and 10, the Browns passed the ball only 40% of the time, so far below the league average, and averaged 7.9 yards per play when they decided to pass, and when they decided to rush, 5.9 yards per rush. That's actually one of the best marks that I can find in the data that I have available. So I look back at from 2005 to 2020, and the Browns had the 6th highest yards per carry on 1st and 10 plays. So that's fantastic. But the reality is that the Browns are never going to be more effective passing the ball, are never going to be more effective rushing the ball than they are passing the ball on 1st and 10. The kind of a lot of the broader analytic measures back that up. The one that I use a lot is expected points added per play, which is also known as EPA per play, if folks have heard of that. But that's basically a measure of how many points you expect to add on the scoreboard next based on the results of the play that just happened. Rushing plays are, for the most part, negative, other than 3rd and short situations for the most part. So that measure suggests the team should pass the ball more. And I think that looking at yards per play is maybe a simpler way to look at it than expected points added, which can be a little pie in the sky for a lot of folks. But kind of my goal here is to communicate a lot of these measures in more simplistic ways. So I feel like that makes it a little more approachable. But so, kind of to summarize, I think that there's a lot of gains to be had for the Browns if they want to pass the ball more on 1st and 10 situations. They were, I think I mentioned earlier, 40% was the amount of time they passed on 1st down, and that was the second lowest mark in the league, ahead of only Tennessee.
Now, obviously, a part of that is the tremendous backfield that they have. There's,
Absolutely.
31 teams that don't have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They would have Dearness Johnson starting in a lot of those other rooms. So obviously that helped. And obviously last year was the first year in the new system. They were, no off season, everything that was weird about last year. I wonder if it's more skewed, if they threw the ball more later in the season on 1st down. I don't know if you have that kind of a breakdown. And also the other thing I'm curious about is we all know the ridiculous stats that Nick Chubb has in the 4th quarter. He averages almost 11 yards a run in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So do you have a breakdown, 4th quarter versus the first 3, or at least second half versus the first half, or that kind of stuff that sort of is more near the league average?
Definitely some great points there. So first, I'll say that kind of the first article I wrote for the OBR was about the Browns passing, kind of lean more toward passing in the second half of the season in 2020, which I thought was really encouraging. That could just be, kind of Stefanski mixing things up, keep opponents guessing, which is great. I hope to see more of that in the second half of the season, but in his second season, but we'll see. I think my conclusion was more that I expect him to be more run heavy, which, as long as the Browns offense keeps moving efficiently, that's great. Getting more to your second point, the Nick Chubb averaging 10 yards per carry in the 4th quarter, I think that's wonderful. I would bet my firstborn child that he will not repeat that in 2021. He only had 30 carries in the 4th quarter last year. And I hope he has a lot more than that, because that means the Browns are doing really well in 2021. So, actually teams average fewer yards per carry in the 4th quarter than they do the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But obviously teams are more willing to lean on the run in a lot more situations when they get to the 4th quarter if they have a lead. So sure. I think that's a part of that. And I think the Browns are a very well-suited team to have a lead with. I'm hoping to see them have leads and use the rushing attack later in the game. But I would like to see him pass more earlier in the game and on early downs.
And I think they did that. I can't remember if you touched on it. You probably did during your a couple of minutes ago. But I think as Kevin Stefanski got more comfortable with Baker Mayfield and vice versa, and they got through those 3 ridiculous monsoon weather games that popped up out of nowhere last year, they definitely trusted each other more. They threw the ball more, and it was – everybody likes to say we're a running team, and we can run the ball better than anybody, I think, in the league. But I think 6 is the engine for this team, and I think we're going to see more of that. Am I wrong in remembering that last year, that it ticked up quite a bit in the second half of the year?
It did, yeah. The Browns went from being, I want to say, 29th in the league in pass probability over expected to 13th or 12th, I want to say, in the last 8 games plus playoffs. So, I think they're trending a lot closer to a balanced attack, and we'll just have to see if that continues in 2021.
All right. Anything else you got for us here?
I don't think so, but it was great being on here. My first Twitch experience, so very cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Corey.
Thanks, Anthony. So for everyone who is here on Twitch, it is September. As a quick reminder, you can sub either using, if you've got an Amazon Prime account, you can link it to your Twitch account and get a free subscription every single month to your favorite Twitch channel. Maybe it's the OBR _ Browns. I'll be gifting out 5 subs every Friday night. So come and join us for the roundtable each time for a chance at maybe being one of those lucky few, or 20% off, like we said, for the entire month of September for your subs. Get access to some really cool emotes and a few other things. So Switching gears a little bit from the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball, a lot of really big expectations this year for the Browns on the defensive side of the ball. They were able to do a relatively good job of containing the Chiefs last year, keeping that game as close as possible. So let's talk a little bit more about the defensive side of the ball. Our very own producer, Ian McBride, talked about a key addition this week.
2021 with a much better outlook on defense. After curing their lingering case of Sendejoitis, the Browns proceeded to sign and draft approximately 47 new starters, including big names like Jadeveon Clowney and John Johnson. All in all, the Browns' defense figures to field new starters and key backups at every level, which makes sense for a team that non-sarcastically started Robert Jackson in a playoff game. We won that game, by the way. While it's certainly fair to be optimistic about the Browns' likely improvement on defense, it's also important to remember that the Browns entered 2021 with one of the youngest rosters in the NFL, behind only the Jets, Lions, and Panthers. Even the big-name signings for the Browns are younger than you might think. John Johnson is only 25, and Jadeveon Clowney is only 28, despite how it seems like he's been in the league forever. Even the holdovers are probably younger than you might think. Mack Wilson is 23, Denzel Ward is 24, and so is Ronnie Harrison. And that's not even getting into the rookies, with Greg Newsome and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah barely being old enough to drink. All in all, the Browns are only fielding 3 defensive players over the age of 30. Free agent signings Troy Hill and Malik Jackson, and reserve linebacker Malcolm Smith. Which is all just a roundabout way of explaining that the Browns' defense is going to need time to gel. But more importantly than that, they'll need coaches and players to step up and do what they can to shorten the adjustment period. Which brings me to my point. It's this guy, Anthony Walker. When the Browns signed Anthony Walker on March 19th, the collective groan from the Colts locker room was heard all the way in Cleveland. Multiple Colts players came out to speak on his leadership, including defensive back Kenny Moore. You'll never understand the effect a teammate can have on another. We all signed up for this and that's okay, but talking about this moment and then it actually happening is totally different. Defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus called Walker the heart and soul of the defense. But the strongest words came from the Colts' strongest player, linebacker Darius Leonard. Walker was only a second-year player when Leonard entered the league, but had already taken on a leadership role. The two grew close, and Leonard credits much of his success to playing with Anthony Walker, claiming, "I wouldn't be me without him." And those are nice to hear, but it's the specifics that show why the Browns are so excited to bring Walker in. Check out this interview from Darius Leonard last year.
Darius, we know that you and Anthony are super close. Do you feel like you are a better linebacker when he's next to you on the field? And if so, why?
Yes, because, when Anthony's out there, he's so smart. Like he calls out plays before it happens, or, if I'm missed a line, he's there to tell me, hey, get over here. His pre-snap recognition is off the charts. He's very smart, very athletic, and we've been playing linebacker, being a duo together for going on 3 years now. So we have a lot of plays that, if one guy mess up and the other guy sit, we cover for each other. Just got that bond, we got that feel to know that, he's supposed to be here, he's not, so let me cover for him. And if I see him in my position, then, I take his position. So it's just that bond and that time we got with each other.
The Browns enter the year with 2 rookies in the linebacking room. Both athletic players who won't have any issues adjusting to the speed of the NFL game, but will take some time mentally like all rookies do. Leonard was one of the many players JOK was compared to during the draft cycle, and hearing how much his development was aided by Walker means we may see JOK's development be expedited. And hell, he's no slouch as a player himself. His game isn't entirely mental, he's got some speed as well. According to former coordinator Eberflus, what makes Anthony so good is his ability to see things fast and beat guys to the punch. He's been able to do that down in, down out, and that's why he's been such an effective linebacker for us over the last couple of years. This defense is young. 2 rookies look to play big roles, as well as a few second-year players and players with little experience. To make this season work, the Browns needed players that not only knew what spot they needed to be in on any given play, but what spot everyone else needs to be in as well. The Browns appear to have gotten one of the best. Anthony Walker is a proven leader who can lead by example. Despite all the big names and big draft picks the Browns brought in on defense, he may be the most important new addition.
there from our producer Ian on a great acquisition there. Anthony Schwartz, big time leader for the Browns on their linebacking core. But Steven, I've got to ask you, for the defensive backfield, is John Johnson kind of looked at as the leader for that group, similarly to how Anthony Schwartz is viewed?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. He was the green dot in Los Angeles last year for the Rams, and he's one of the best at his position in the entire league. And personally, I think, and of course, I'm obviously a little biased, I think he was probably the best free agent acquisition of any team, definitely the biggest one for the Browns. And they had a lot of really good ones. That's no reflection on the rest of them. And he's going to come in handy against a guy that I have been tasked with in my segment here. How do you stop Travis Kelce? You can't. Next segment. I mean, that's the short version right there. Defending Travis Kelce, or Kels, depending on who you believe, is one of the toughest assignments in the league. I mean, we saw him last year against the Browns, against everybody, but especially against the Browns in that playoff game. He was just unstoppable. I mean, he's not just one of the best players. He's one of the best tight ends. He's one of the best players in the league. And Cody Sook, our resident analytics expert, other than Anthony, did a great piece just today talking about this matchup. And he had some great stuff in there. I'm going to give Cody credit for this. VIP members can read this on the website at theobr.com. He was first in all qualifying tight ends in expected points added, wins above replacement, and points earned per route. Plus, in a more regular person friendly statistic, his yards per route run is almost 2.5, if I'm reading this graph correctly, which is absolutely bonkers. And we saw the way that he tore this the depleted defense up last year. And I think absolutely, if you're going to slow him down, John Johnson is going to be the tip of the spear, because much like we've said repeatedly with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews in Baltimore, when Patrick Mahomes breaks contain, when the pressure starts to get to him and things get in chaos and they're out of system, yes, he can run. Yes, he's got Tyreek Hill that can have all those highlight plays that we see on SportsCenter and everything. But the first place his eyes go to is his security blanket, and that's Travis Kelce. So you're going to have a multi-pronged approach to even slow this guy down. It's become a cliche, but I remember when Dan Patrick said it in the 80s, and for the first time, you can't stop this guy. You can only hope to contain him. And that's how you kind of got to go with Kelce. And so in a weird way of looking at it, and anyone who's read my stuff or listened to me knows that I frequently look at things in a weird way. I don't know if John Johnson is going to be the most important person. It's going to be how everybody else handles their roles, and two of them in specific. First is the front four on the defensive line. We all know that that's the key. They have a lot of new pieces on that offensive line over there, and the Buccaneers showed in the Super Bowl that if you can get home consistently, if you can knock Patrick Mahomes off his spot consistently, just bringing four, it makes your chance to beat this Chiefs team go up exponentially. So if Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley and Malik ×2 and all those guys that we've been talking about all throughout camp can do their job and beat those rookies on a consistent basis, it's really going to help. Now, obviously, he's Patrick Mahomes for a reason. They don't give out $500 million contracts to guys who can't play out of structure. And he's got a bunch of weapons. He's got a coach that he trusts, who trusts him. They're in perfect sync together. And so just knocking him off his spot is not enough. I mean, it doesn't guarantee anything. He can make tremendous plays out of pressure. So I think if they can do it with only four, the key to that is now you can drop 7 into coverage to cover at most 5 receivers. Okay. And simple math tells you that that's better than having 5 to cover 5. I mean, it's very simple. The second place that I think that's not Kelce related, that I think is going to be very critical, and some people might be thinking Denzel Ward on Tyreek Hill, and that will obviously be important, but I think it's Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome will be tasked with Mecole Hardman if the depth charts are to be believed. Well, obviously, we'll have to see how it all plays out. But if he can take Mecole Hardman out of the equation, if he can perform like the first-round pick that we all think he can be and has been to this point throughout camp, well, again, the simple math then leads you to believe you've got 6 guys left on defense to cover 4 remaining receivers. So in theory, if you wanted to go complete man, you could double Travis Kelce. You could also double Tyreek Hill. And then the guys like Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson, or maybe the back out of the backfield, are your other one-on-ones. And you hope that you can win most of those battles with your defense. Not that those guys aren't good, of course they are, but I think you take your chances with Byron Pringle beating you rather than leaving Travis Kelce undoubled. Now, they could go with 7 guys dropping. They could go to a full zone and try to keep it in front. That's another way they could go. But I tend to believe that what they're going to come out and do, at least in the beginning, is give Denzel a chance to take on Tyreek one-on-one. They're going to say, hey, 21, you want to be paid like a lockdown corner? Here you go. Lock this guy down. Now, they'll give him some shade over the top. They'll give him the cloud coverage and all that stuff that Jake talks about, obviously. But I think that's the way they can do it, because then that allows you to bring John Johnson into, I don't want to say shadow, but he'll have a lot of assignments where Travis Kelce is his guy. But it also allows you to do a rotation that can help him on that to double or box him in or bracket him in. And, JOK obviously is the rookie that we're all excited to see. His coverage skills in college, borderline cornerback-like in those short and medium zones where Kelce does a lot of his work. So he would be a guy that I would expect to rotate in and handle Kelce on quite a bit. We just talked about Anthony Walker. He'll be in the rotation. Ronnie Harrison, as Jake mentioned, I think is very underrated. He can handle that kind of stuff well. They may even throw Troy Hill into there, even though he's a little undersized to handle Kelce. Grant Delpit, for however many snaps he is out there. If you want to go, somebody covering deep, that's what Delpit does. So I think that the key is those two things that I talked about. If the front four can get home on a regular basis, and Greg Newsome can handle Mecole Hardman and his side without a lot of help, it opens up so many more possibilities. Because I think the last thing you want, if you are the Browns defense, and they had to do it last year in the playoff game, is to have Denzel trying to cover Travis Kelce. As far as sticking with him on routes and stuff, yeah, Denzel can do that. He's much quicker, but the size difference, it's just too much to overcome. You can be on him like glue, and like Jake just said about David Njoku in the Browns offense, you just throw it up. He's just so much bigger and stronger than a guy like Denzel Ward that he's going to win most of those battles. So if you can hold down Travis Kelce, especially in the out-of-system plays, the off-kilter plays, off-platform, however you want to phrase it, if you can hold him down, he's going to make a few plays. He's just that good. And make guys, like I said, like Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson and Edwards-Helaire, who's a great back, if you can make those guys beat you, and if they step up and do it, you tip your cap and you say, okay, you won today. So, but the key to Kelce, I think you're absolutely right, going all the way back to the very beginning, is going to be John Johnson III, because we're going to go back to Cody's article here. Where is it? He's got some he was tremendous against tight ends last year. And we in Cleveland know, Corey, you haven't been around for this for the last 2 decades. We've been murdered by tight ends for 2 decades. Last year alone, they gave up almost 1,000 yards of receiving just to tight ends, 10 touchdowns, 28th in DVOA defending tight ends. John Johnson III in coverage versus tight ends in 2020 with the Rams, 7 completions on 15 targets for 33 yards, which is a league-leading 2.2 yards per attempt, and he broke up 5 passes. So that's what he does. It's one of the things that he does on an elite level. It's why they brought him in. It's one of the things that he can help with in this specific matchup. And as I just mentioned, when they play the Ravens back-to-back down the road, because Mark Andrews is a similar security blanket to Lamar Jackson as Kelce is to Patrick Mahomes. So yes, I think it's going to take a total team effort against an offense like the Chiefs. But as far as specifically Travis Kelce, John Johnson III will be the tip of the spear in trying to defend that guy.
Yeah, the AFC North, definitely no stranger to having a number of tight ends over the past years. Todd Heap, Pete Miller, Tyler Eifert. So Jake had mentioned earlier that the Browns may go after Nick Bolton, the 2nd-round pick for the Chiefs on their defensive side. Do you think the Chiefs may similarly try to go after these 2 young guys like Newsome and JOK on the Browns defense side?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do with rookies, right? Hey, welcome to the league, Rook. Prove to me that we shouldn't come at you 35 times in a row. I mean, that's just what you do, and so I think the upgrades around them will certainly help. And that front four, again, is going to be key to all this. But yeah, If Newsome is out there one-on-one, if they go Newsome one-on-one with Mecole Hardman, I would expect 15 to throw the ball Hardman's way a few times and see what the rookie's got. And the same thing, especially when you got a weapon like Kelsey, if JOK is on him, especially if it's a one-on-one situation for whatever reason, I would totally expect them to attack him until he shows them that they shouldn't do it anymore. It's the smart move.
Sure is. Well, next up, we do have our analytics nerd, Cody Slick, like you'd mentioned. If you check out the OBR.com, huge season preview article on there. Definitely a lot to dive into and to digest. To get you started a little bit, if you have not read it yet, we've actually got some of his thoughts right here to share with you now.
Welcome to the nerd or Lambda wing of the OBR headquarters, where we have calculators, free ring binders, and Microsoft Excel tutorials at your disposal whenever you need us. For tonight's analytics segment, we're going to take a look at an article I published yesterday that focuses on a game preview for this Sunday versus the Kansas City Chiefs, mainly looking at key matchups, data, and opportunities for the Browns on Sunday in that season opener. One of the more interesting storylines that we're going to look at is that how are Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt going to game plan on the offensive side of the ball against the Chiefs? Are they to come out 11 personnel and be aggressive and throw the ball and then do play and boot action out of 12 and 13 personnel? Or are they going to try to control the game, dictate the pace, and limit the number of Chiefs drives by giving the ball to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? So to start, let's look at Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb and their possibilities this week. There's no doubt in my mind that they will step up to the plate and be difference makers in this game. And there's opportunity versus a Chiefs defense that finished 31st in both expected points contributed by the rushing defense last season and was 31st in rush defense DVOA. And they were 25th also in adjusted line yards, which attempts to separate the ability of a running back versus the ability of an offensive line. So should the Browns lean on the running game early and often, you have Chubb and Hunt. Chubb finished first last year in rushing yards over expectation per attempt, in yards after contact per attempt, while Hunt was 7 in explosive runs and 8th in elusive rating. So that's one spectrum that the Browns could do coming into this game on Sunday. The other one, they come out aggressive like we discussed before and throw the ball early and often to try and form some sort of lead and to take advantage of Baker Mayfield's deep passing prowess. In 2020, he finished 4th in positive play percentage, 5th in on-target percentage, and 7th in expected points added on throws 20 or yards greater downfield. Now, we also last year in that divisional round of the playoffs, just how much this team struggled with getting separation and with getting speed, stretching the field vertically and laterally. But now, with the addition of Anthony Schwartz, world-class speed, separation ability, and the emergence of Donovan Peoples-Jones, who finished 2nd in yards per route run and 2nd in passer rating when targeted on throws greater than 20 yards downfield, as well as Odell Beckham coming back hopefully to full health, there's going to be opportunities to take advantage of that deep passing game against a Chiefs defense that was relatively stingy on those passes last season. They were allowed a 68.1% deserved catch percentage, which was 15th, and a 34.2 positive play percentage, which was also 15th across the league. Also on the defensive side of the football, one thing I want to look at is how Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, assuming Clowney plays, he has this undisclosed illness, but all signs point towards him playing on Sunday. They get to face off against a Chiefs defense that's going to start 3 rookies. They're going to have Creed Humphrey at center. They're going to have Trey Smith at right guard and Lucas Nang at right tackle. Yeah, he's not a rookie, but he opted out of the 2020 season due to COVID-19. So I consider him a rookie from my point of view. Nothing jumps off to me when you look at the advanced stats for Jadeveon Clowney since over the past 3 seasons. But he had the 3rd highest double team rate among all edge rushers over 2018, 2019, and 2020. So now offensive coordinators can't double team both Clowney or Garrett, or maybe even one of them. So that frees up both of those guys to take advantage of their upper echelon talents at getting to the passer. Mahomes is undoubtedly the best quarterback in football, but he's not immune to the difficulties of throwing under pressure. In 2020, when we look at when he was kept clean in the pocket versus when he was under pressure, his adjusted completion percentage dropped by 16.9%, passer rating by 45.2, and yards per attempt fell by 2.1, while his turnover-worthy throw percentage increased by 3.1%. So if Garrett and Clowney could get towards the quarterback, make him uncomfortable and not just sit back in a clean pocket for 3.5 seconds and throw the ball to Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce or McCall Herman, then they're going to have an advantageous position from the defense. Early on in the season, this Browns team is going to be good, barring significant injury, knock on wood, or whatever your desk or table is made out of. And they're going to be a good football team regardless of what happens on Sunday. So keep your heads high and hope for a win. And take care, everybody.
All right, welcome back, everyone. At this point, we are happy to be joined by the head honcho himself, the web dork, Barry McBride himself. Barry, welcome to the show. You know, of course, at the OBR, we love talking about our boys in Brown. However, it's always good to keep your eye on the competition of the AFC North. We've had a lot of news this week come out about the Ravens. So what's going on down there in Baltimore and the rest of the AFC North?
You're muted, Barry.
Everyone's favorite joke from 2021.
Mm-hmm. Some of the talk on social media about his passing gets, pretty hyperbolic, that he's like, Tebow-esque, like he's terrible.
Right.
And that's just simply not true. He's not as good at throwing the ball as he is running the ball, but the guy can throw the ball and he can put it on a dime when it's called for. But I think you're right. If they're going to proceed through the playoffs, I think it's been proved so far that this offense can win you a lot of games in the regular season, but the blueprint for stopping them in the playoffs has been out there. I think you're right on that one.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to come together as fast as they would want this year. This is the closest competitor the Browns have in the AFC North, in my opinion. But if I had to put a number on it, I'd call them a 10-7 type team at this point. They're also a little bit weaker on edge rushers. They've got Owe, the rookie, and they've got Justin Houston, who is, half my age, so he's pretty old. And I don't foresee the opposing offenses being all that scared of that rush. And you put that together with all their injuries and the slowness to develop the passing game. This is a good team, but it's not a great team.
Yeah, and the new people and the uncertainty at their edge rusher, which has always been one of the strengths of their defense, is going to become have an even brighter light shined on it with the loss of Peters. What about the rest of the AFC North?
Well, let's start with the Bengals because we can deal with them relatively quickly. The Bengals are still the Bengals. They're doing Bengal-like things down there. They drafted a great quarterback last year, but he got sacked an average of 3.2 times a game. I don't see that fundamentally changing this year because the interior of the Bengals' offensive line still is a question mark, in my opinion. And I think with some of the savage defenses in the AFC North, Joe Burrow is going to be sacked a lot again this year. The Bengals had a golden opportunity to snag the best offensive tackle in the draft this year. They passed on it to get a pass catcher, and I think that they're going to regret that. I think Joe Burrow specifically is going to regret that as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think when they see Cleveland on their schedule and Joe Burrow thinks about Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney and Malik ×2 and Tack McKinley and all those other guys we mentioned, he might get sick. I would come down with a cold if I was him. I would come down with a real bad cold that week. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think they're going to – I think they've made, they made some improvements here and there. I think they'll be, a slightly better team than last year, if for no other reason than Joe Burrow, assuming his knee is healthy, has a year in the league. And, a quarterback of his talent obviously makes steps forwards every single year. But, yeah, I don't think it's near the point where they're considered a threat. You got to see it play out on the field, obviously, but I'm with you on that one.
Right. And, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are built around the notion of dominating you defensively and then scrambling together enough points with the 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. And Roethlisberger does have some weapons, but their run game is unproven behind Najee Harris, their first-round pick this year. And I am not necessarily a big believer that Roethlisberger is going to go out on a high note. He showed up to training camp very fit this year, but I don't know if physical fitness will return the strength in his arm that seems to have faded over the last years. He's got a number of weapons. He's got Juju Smith-Schuster, for example, to catch the ball. They still have him, but they're knitting together an offensive line again. Roethlisberger isn't as mobile as he used to be, and I just don't see great things happening for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021. I've got them pegged as roughly a 500 team. They're at a disadvantage playing in a very tough AFC North, but I figure they're 9-8 or 8-9 or 8-9, something along those lines.
No, I did like a couple of their picks this year. I know they took a lot of heat on draft night for passing on offensive line early, but Kendrick Green, who is a guy that some of us at the OBR really, really wanted the Browns to grab. He's earned the starting role at center, and I like Dan Moore. And the kid from last year, whose name I'm blanking on, the kid from Louisiana at guard. I can't think of his name right now. He's really Kevin Dotson. He's really good as well, potentially really good. But yeah, they haven't done anything together. But as we all in Cleveland know, we've said the Steelers are done so many times over the decades, and then they just plug a guy in. And you look at Pat Freiermuth, it's going to be another tight end at the Steelers that we hate for a decade, I think. So until they're dead, I don't believe they're dead.
Yeah, like I said, I think they're going to be mediocre this year, but ultimately when they have to replace their quarterback, which maybe this year, if the offensive line can't keep them upright, or it's going to be after next year, they're going to crater at some point. They have to lose enough in order to get a new quarterback. And I see that happening, probably not this year, but next year when they try to, perhaps roll a Mason Rudolph into the role as quarterback. Simply not going to be that successful, I don't believe.
Right. Well, I think we're up to the point, Corey, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the host here, but we're up to the point where predictions for Sunday is next on the docket, and then we're going to get out of here. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into predictions as our final point here for the evening, we do have a couple of more shows coming up leading into the weekend before the big game on Sunday. Starting tomorrow, Stephen, we've got a special start time, 11 a.m. in the morning for your draft show. Do you want to tell the people what they can expect tomorrow morning?
Yeah, the draft show during the season, we put it before all the college games start on Saturday, so we can give you some guys to keep an eye on. Here's who we like, and here's what time he's playing today, and all that kind of stuff. So that's 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and I booked a very special guest, Jordan Reed from the Draft Network, will be joining me to go over some guys from his top 50, his personal top 50 board. Some edge guys, some interior defensive line, some wide receivers, some other stuff. Jordan was gracious enough to give us some time. He'll stop by tomorrow. That's at 11 a.m. It's not going to be too in-depth. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be the same level of research on prospects as maybe 2 weeks before the draft, but just people to keep an eye on. This is the first one. Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m., right here.
And we're really sorry we weren't able to get to all of the questions that were in chat today. We had a lot of great questions, not too much time for our format for today, but we will be doing a live pregame show from the Old River Tap and Social in Rocky River, 2:30 p.m. on Sunday. That's going to be a lot more similar to our normal layout shows. Do a lot of Q&A there. So the questions that you have for any of the guys that'll be on the show on Sunday, that will be good time to go with any of those questions. So before we go ahead and log off here and call it a show here, final prediction time, Friday going into the weekend. Steven, starting with you.
Well, I've been going back and forth on this because, yes, the Browns roster is improved. And I think all of these Super Bowl aspirations are absolutely legitimate, which is a weird sentence to say in Cleveland. But you couldn't have gotten a much tougher task for week one right out of the chute, especially with this many new people on defense, than not only to play the Chiefs, but to play them at their house. So I've been going back and forth on this one. But I think the Badger situation has finally swung it. It's maybe 51-49 as far as percentages at this point. And that's why my prediction, I'm going to take us. I'm going to do it. You can call me a homer if you want. I'm saying the Browns come home Sunday night with a W, 38-37.
Barry, what do you got for Sunday for us?
Well, it's obviously going to be 34-31 Cleveland Browns. I think everybody knows that. The big question for me that I'm going to be watching early is I'm going to be watching the Kansas City offensive line. They have knitted together an offensive line rapidly during the offseason. A lot of high hopes for some of the players on that offensive line, but offensive lines take a little while to gel and work together. So in the first quarter, I'm going to be watching that offensive line to see how quickly it gels, while at the same time, we're watching a Browns defense that has a lot of players playing together for the first time. I think we're going to gel a little bit faster, and that's why I think the Cleveland Browns are going to be 3-point winners over the Kansas City Chiefs this Sunday afternoon.
Keep your eye on the two young rookies, Newsome and JOK, on the defensive side of the ball. I think those are going to be a couple of your keys to the game, a couple of names and faces that were not in that playoff game last season that I think are going to make a pretty big impact. So thank you all for joining us on our very first Friday roundtable here with the OBR. To check out any other of our shows coming up, including the 11 a.m. one tomorrow with Steven, and any articles, go to the OBR.com. Check out any of the articles there in our schedule, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 11 a.m. sharp.